At exactly 3 a.m., the three-story house nestled in a quiet upscale neighborhood outside of Austin sat in a heavy, almost suffocating silence. Outside, neatly trimmed hedges and the softly glowing pool created the illusion of a perfect family home, wealthy, orderly, serene. But inside, reality told another story. Nathan Ellis, 42, an award-winning architect and now CEO of a leading urban infrastructure firm, walked slowly down the second-floor hallway. A dim nightlight cast a golden hue over his drawn face. His tousled hair and deep under-eye circles betrayed 8 long months of sleepless nights. Ever since Emily passed away, Nathan hadn't had a single night of uninterrupted sleep. Not because of deadlines or business pressure, but because of his 5-year-old twin boys, Liam and Theo, who woke up screaming in terror. Strangely, they always woke at exactly 3:15 a.m., the same minute, every single night, as if haunted by a ghost with a precise schedule. Then it came. The scream. Sharp, piercing, slicing through the stillness like shattered glass. "Daddy! She's here again!" Liam's voice cracked first, panicked. Theo followed, crying uncontrollably as if something terrifying had appeared in front of them. Nathan didn't hesitate. He ran up the stairs, heart pounding, dread already sinking in. He knew what he would find, but it never hurt any less. The boys' bedroom, decorated with superhero posters and colorful artwork, looked like a war zone. Both beds were empty, blankets tossed aside. Under the small study desk, Liam and Theo huddled together, trembling violently. Papa, the dark lady. She was by the window, Liam stuttered, pointing toward the closed glass. Theo couldn't form words. His tears came in waves, body shaking as though trapped in a fever. Nathan dropped to his knees beside the desk. "There's no one here, boys. You're safe," he whispered, his voice barely steady. It had been 8 months since Nathan last had a full night's sleep. 8 months since Emily no longer lay beside him, her arm draped across his chest, her gentle breath anchoring him to a sense of peace. Now, each night was filled with the ticking of the clock, wind rattling the windows, and the inevitable screams of his children at 3:15 a.m., like a haunted symphony on repeat. He had done everything a father could think of. 3 pediatricians had examined Liam and Theo. All concluded, nothing physically wrong. 2 child psychologists had tried storytelling, drawing, interactive therapy, but the twins stayed silent or burst into tears the moment their mother's name was mentioned. A neurologist had promised answers, but after a series of scans and evaluations, everything came back normal. Normal? There was nothing normal about 5-year-old boys shaking in fear every single night. Nothing normal about a father sitting in the dark, helpless as his children trembled and sobbed in terror. Nathan even overhauled their entire diet, cut sugar, added omega-3s. He hired a sleep consultant, replaced the mattresses, switched nightlights, and used white noise machines. Still, the crying continued. The emptiness in their eyes, their once vibrant, sunlit eyes, remained. The first nanny lasted a week. The second quit after 3 nights. The third said she felt something off in the house. The fourth suggested he consider an exorcism. The fifth, Mrs. Hargrove, was the most seasoned. A 60-year-old woman with decades of experience, she had worked for some of the most prestigious families in Dallas. When she first arrived, she said confidently, "Children need structure and discipline." But after 2 weeks, her bloodshot eyes and weary voice betrayed the truth. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ellis. I don't think I can help anymore." Nathan didn't blame them. On some nights, he wanted to run too. And on those nights, sitting alone in the quiet kitchen, he missed Emily more than ever. She had known how to hold the boys, how to make them laugh even after nightmares. She once told him, "As long as they feel safe, they'll be okay." But no one was here to make them feel safe anymore. Only him, surrounded by a too-big house, 2 unraveling children, and a loneliness that seeped into every corner of his once perfect world. That morning, just as Nathan stepped into a conference room on the 28th floor to meet with a group of Korean investors, his phone vibrated for the 5th time in less than an hour. He glanced at the screen. The school again. "Excuse me, everyone. I need just a moment," he said, trying to stay composed as he stepped out of the room. The voice on the other end was the vice principal, gentle but edged with concern. "Mr. Ellis, I'm sorry to bother you, but we need you to pick up Liam and Theo immediately." "What happened?" Nathan froze mid-step in the hallway. During math class, they both fell asleep at their desks. When the teacher tried to wake them, Liam began screaming, saying he didn't want to be taken to the dark place. It frightened the other students. Nathan's chest tightened. He rushed out of the building, leaving behind a multi-million-dollar deal that had been in the works for 6 months. All he could think was, "What are my children so afraid of?" On the way to school, he called his assistant and told her to contact every top-tier nanny agency. "I don't care how much it costs. I need someone who truly understands what my boys are going through." When he arrived, Liam and Theo were sleeping on the infirmary sofa. But it was not a peaceful sleep. Twitching limbs, soft whimpers, as if trapped in some invisible nightmare. Nathan knelt beside them, gently brushing hair from Liam's forehead. When Liam opened his eyes, he said nothing, just stared back at Nathan with a hollow, exhausted gaze. On the drive home, the car was quiet until Theo, usually the quieter of the two, broke the silence. "Daddy, did Mom die because she was asleep?" Nathan nearly let go of the steering wheel. "What?" he asked, glancing at his son through the rearview mirror. "Because she was sleeping, and then she never woke up again. So if we sleep, do we die too?" Liam added, his voice small but steady. "That's why we can't sleep. If we do, she'll come, the dark lady, like she did for Mom." Nathan pulled the car over to the shoulder. His hands were trembling. How had he not seen this sooner? They weren't just afraid of nightmares, not just of the dark. They believed that sleep meant death, that the dark lady they kept mentioning wasn't a ghost, but death itself. He turned around and looked at his sons, his heart tearing in two. "Boys," he whispered, "sleep didn't take your mom. She had a sickness the doctors didn't see in time. And I'm here. I'm always here. No one is going to take you away." But even as he said it, Nathan knew. His words weren't enough, not yet. Not for children who believed that closing their eyes might mean never opening them again. That weekend, Nathan arranged 3 back-to-back interviews at home, hoping that somewhere among them was the person who could finally help his children escape the grip of their endless nightmares. The first candidate, Mrs. Greenfield, was a retired nurse with a specialty in pediatric sleep disorders. She arrived promptly, armed with a thick binder, and spoke in detailed medical terms about melatonin cycles, REM stages, and possible anxiety medications. Liam and Theo clung to Nathan's sides the entire time. When she asked, "What are you scared of at night?" neither boy spoke. They simply buried their faces deeper into their father's shirt. "They need psychiatric evaluation," she concluded. "I can implement a treatment protocol, but it will require strict discipline and possibly medication." The second candidate, Ms. Martinez, was a preschool teacher with a master's in child psychology. She brought puppets, coloring books, and therapeutic stories. For nearly an hour, she encouraged the boys to draw their sadness and memories with Mom. But when the word Mom came up, both boys burst into uncontrollable tears. Nathan had to carry them out to the living room to calm down. "I believe they're stuck in grief denial," Ms. Martinez explained, her tone clinical. "They must be pushed to confront reality, or the healing process won't begin." Nathan's chest felt like a collapsing wall. The third candidate arrived nearly 2 hours late. Nathan was moments from canceling when he opened the door and saw a woman with curly hair, a plain dress, and a worn canvas bag slung over her shoulder. She smiled apologetically. "I'm so sorry. I got lost. First time I've been to Austin." Her name was Grace Whitmore, 35 years old. No college degree, no counseling license, no thick resume. But she had eyes that listened and a smile so soft that Nathan found himself breathing a little slower. "Hi there," she said, crouching to meet Liam and Theo at eye level. "I'm Grace, and I need to ask you something very important." The boys looked at each other, then at her, not running, not hiding, just curious. "Do you two like stories about dragons?" Liam blinked. Theo tilted his head. "Dragons?" "I know lots of stories about kind dragons," Grace continued. "Ones who protect children while they sleep. They chase away scary things." For the first time in months, Nathan saw it, that flicker of light returning to his son's eyes. Grace sat cross-legged on the living room floor, her canvas bag resting quietly beside her. No fancy toys, no books, no visual aids, just her, and a voice soft as early autumn wind. "Once upon a time," she began, "there were two little dragons named Luno and Brim, who lived in a tiny village where everyone went to bed early because they were afraid of the dark." Liam and Theo sat just a few feet away, not quite close, but their eyes never left her. But Luno and Brim weren't scared, because the two brothers had a secret. Every night they wore invisible armor, made from the things they loved the most, and that made them so strong that no shadow dared come near. Grace changed her voice for the dragon parts, growled playfully, waved her arms like wings. Theo giggled. Liam looked at him and then covered his mouth, laughing too. Laughter, small, fleeting, but powerful enough to shift the entire room. Nathan stood in the doorway, frozen, afraid that if he moved, if he even breathed, the moment would vanish. But it was real. His children, who had only known tears for 8 long months, were laughing because of a stranger and a story about dragons. Grace didn't ask about their mother. She didn't analyze their trauma. She didn't try to fix them with theories. She just listened. She told a story. And she made them feel safe. When the story ended, she asked, "If you could wear armor like Luno and Brim, what would yours be made of?" Theo whispered. "My teddy bear." Liam said quietly, "Dad's hands." Grace smiled. "Well then, that's the strongest armor in the world." Nathan turned away, wiping his eyes, not from sadness, but because, for the first time in months, something in this house felt like hope. Grace officially began working on Monday. She didn't bring a printed schedule or a binder of methodologies like the others had. Instead, she arrived with an old suitcase filled with strange little treasures: bottles of lavender oil, tiny colored crystals, wind chimes, worn storybooks wrapped in cloth, and fabric pouches scented with mint and licorice. "We need to create a space where the body and heart feel safe," Grace said as she rearranged Liam and Theo's bedroom. She replaced the white nightlights with soft golden bulbs, hung wind chimes on the windows, placed crystals in the corners of the room, each one representing something special: courage, love, peace, protection, and family. But most important of all, she introduced the bedtime ritual of protection. Around 7 p.m. after dinner, the trio began their sleep preparation ceremony. Grace made a warm bath with sea salt and a few drops of essential oils. "This water washes away fear," she'd say with a wink. After the bath, the boys would choose a dragon story for the night. Each story featured 2 brave brothers, clever, kind, and fearless in the face of the cold shadows. Grace brought the tales to life. She used different voices for each character, made sound effects with her hands, and let her face dance with every expression. The boys didn't just listen, they entered the story. And finally came the most important part: activating the invisible armor. Together they placed crystals around their beds. Each one was chosen by the boys and set into position. This one's for courage. This one's for Mommy's love. This one's for Daddy's arms. Then they sat still for a few seconds, eyes closed, breathing deep, and repeated, "I am safe, I am loved, I am not alone." At first, Liam and Theo still woke in the middle of the night, but instead of screaming, they whispered, "Miss Grace." And the moment she entered the room, gently reminded them about the Dragon Brothers and the armor, they drifted back to sleep within minutes. After a few nights, they managed 5 hours, then 6. Nathan watched in disbelief. The specialists had talked about medication, deep therapy, neurological testing. But Grace? She used chimes, floral scents, stories, and love. He didn't know how it worked, but standing outside their door each night, hearing soft giggles over a funny dragon voice. Then silence, then sleep. He knew something miraculous had begun. After a week, the house began to echo with a sound Nathan had almost forgotten: morning laughter. Grace turned breakfast into an adventure. On Tuesdays, it was Golden Dragon Breakfast, pancakes shaped like dragon scales, drizzled with honey in swirling patterns. Thursdays became Brave Night Breakfast, toast cut into shield shapes, served with red and blue smoothies that looked like magic potions. Nathan, once a silent breakfast kind of man, newspaper in hand, cold coffee untouched, now sat and watched his sons chatter, asking Miss Grace what monster the dragon would fight today. He laughed more, and for the first time in 8 months, didn't feel guilty about it. Grace sent him photos of the boys drawing, giggling, wearing makeshift capes, and he found himself smiling in the middle of executive board meetings. One evening, while cleaning up dishes, Grace said softly, "I think I found something that might be part of the problem." Nathan looked at her, curious. "I noticed Liam and Theo wake up almost always between 2:30 and 3 a.m., so I checked for patterns." She led him upstairs and pointed to the wall-mounted AC unit. "When it's on auto mode, it makes a soft click whir when it reactivates. For us, it's nothing. But for kids who are hyper-alert, half asleep, and scared, it might sound like something else." Nathan stood still. 8 months, 3 pediatricians, 2 therapists, 1 neurologist, dozens of sleepless nights. No one had ever noticed the air conditioner. Grace suggested adjusting the timer to avoid sudden restarts, switching to a continuous fan mode, and adding a white noise machine. She also recommended blackout curtains to prevent unexpected light from seeping in during the early hours. Simple fixes. But Nathan looked at her as if she'd just unlocked a hidden door. He asked gently, "Where did you learn all this?" Grace smiled, voice barely above a whisper. "From life. When you're the oldest of 6 and no one's around to help, your classmates are crying babies and your lessons come from silence." And in that moment, Nathan realized the woman doing what no one else had been able to do wasn't successful because of a degree, but because of her heart. On a quiet Saturday morning, just as Nathan took his first sip of coffee, Liam climbed onto his lap with a strangely serious expression. "Dad," he said, "do you like Miss Grace?" Nathan nearly choked. He glanced toward the kitchen where Grace had her back turned, carefully slicing fruit for breakfast. "She's very nice to you two," he replied, trying to sound casual, but Theo leaned in from across the table. "No, he means, do you like her, like you liked Mommy?" The question dropped like a stone into still water. Silence spread. Even Grace, pretending not to listen, paused for a moment. Nathan's throat went dry. He looked at his boys and answered slowly, "Mom will always have a special place in my heart. But Miss Grace is special too, in a different way. That doesn't mean I love Mommy any less." Liam nodded, seemingly satisfied. But Theo frowned, studying his father like he was trying to understand something too big for 5-year-old logic. but you smile when you're with Miss Grace, just like when Mommy was here." Grace turned away, pretending to rinse the knife. Nathan knew she was avoiding his gaze. The rest of the day unfolded under a quiet tension. Lunch was hushed. Grace moved quicker than usual. Nathan locked himself in his office but couldn't concentrate. That evening, after the boys had fallen asleep, Grace knocked on his office door. "We need to talk," she said softly but firmly. They sat facing each other in the living room, the same room that had echoed with laughter not long ago, now silent. "I'm sorry if I made things awkward," she began. "I shouldn't have let myself get too involved." Nathan interrupted. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. I feel something too. I just don't know what to do with it." He took a deep breath. "I'm scared that if we get this wrong, the boys lose someone else, and I don't think I could handle that." Grace looked at him, her expression softening. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "I lost my husband and my daughter. I know how deep grief can go, but I also know this. Loving again doesn't betray the person you lost. Not if it comes from kindness, gratitude, and something real. Then it's a gift, not a betrayal." Nathan sat in silence for a long moment, then whispered, "I've never thought of it that way." Grace gently reached for his hand. A small gesture, but his heart thundered. "So, if this is a second chance," she asked quietly, "are you willing to take it?" And she didn't wait for an answer. That night, everything seemed peaceful. Liam and Theo had already slept nearly 5 hours straight. Grace and Nathan were sitting in the living room, speaking in hushed voices about all the recent changes, from laughter at breakfast to Theo dressing himself without reminders. Then came the soft sound of sniffles from upstairs. Nathan stood instantly. "Liam," he said quietly, as if by instinct. They hurried upstairs. Liam sat on his bed, eyes puffy, face twisted in embarrassment. The sheets were soaked. "I'm sorry," the boy whispered, tears streaming down his cheeks. "It's okay, sweetheart," Grace said gently, grabbing a towel and fresh clothes. Nathan lifted Liam into his arms, carrying him into the small bathroom to clean up. The boy wouldn't meet his father's eyes, trembling with shame and fear. "It was just a dream," Nathan soothed. "Nothing bad happened. You're okay?" Wrapped in a clean pajama shirt, Liam returned to his room. Theo was awake, sitting quietly on the edge of his bed. "Liam's okay," Grace said softly, stroking Theo's hair. Theo looked up at his father and asked, "Are you going to send Miss Grace away, like the others?" The question hit Nathan like a fist to the chest. He sat down beside the bed, looking both boys in the eye, this time not avoiding anything. "No," he said, his voice firm but calm. "Miss Grace isn't like anyone else. She's here because she loves you, and I love you. She will always be part of our family, if that's what you want too." Liam looked up. "She'll stay forever?" Grace sat beside Nathan, eyes shining, but her smile unwavering. "As long as you need me," she whispered, "I'll be here." Both boys wrapped their arms around her, and for the first time there were no invisible shields, no dragon stories, no nightly rituals, just the simple magic of being together. And with that, sleep returned as gently as a whispered promise. That morning, Nathan woke up before his alarm. He didn't get up right away. Instead, he lay still, letting the sounds of life filter in, the soft clinks from the kitchen, light footsteps, and faint giggles floating through the open window. It had been a long time since he felt this kind of peace. He pulled open the bedroom curtains and looked outside, and for a moment his heart caught in his chest. Grace was sitting on the grass with Liam and Theo. The three of them were crouched in a small circle, building a tiny fortress out of sticks. So simple. Yet the boys were laughing uncontrollably. Grace's hair danced in the morning breeze, and the early sun wrapped her shoulders in golden silk. It wasn't extraordinary, but to Nathan it was the most beautiful sight he'd seen since that stormy night. He had once believed this house would forever be a hollow shell, that nothing could ever replace Emily's laughter, the woman who had stood beside him through the darkest times, who used to lie next to him listening to the boy's wild dreams in the middle of the night. But now... Theo threw his arms around Grace's neck, squealing. Liam toppled into her lap, streaking green across her shirt and shouting, "The fortress is under attack." And Grace, she laughed louder than all of them. Nathan couldn't help but smile. He went downstairs, made himself a coffee, and leaned quietly against the back door frame. A light breeze carried the scent of damp grass, children's shampoo, and something unmistakably warm and homey. She had brought light back into a place he thought would stay dark forever. Not with magic, but with persistence. With love, with midnight hugs, dragon tales, warm milk, soft-spoken comfort, and sleepless nights spent beside little beds. Nathan knew no one else could have done what Grace did. Not the therapists, not the teachers, not anyone he had hired. Only her, the woman who had also lost a husband and child, who had also been drowned by grief, and yet had chosen to love again, chosen to stay. He set the coffee down and stepped outside. Liam spotted him first and shouted, "Daddy, be the gatekeeper." Theo waved excitedly, a grin stretching across his face. "Dad, we finished the fortress." Grace turned around, and their eyes met briefly. Just a second, but it was all it took. Everything was clear in that look. There were no more questions, no more doubts. This was his family, a new one, not a replacement for what had been lost, but something rebuilt from the ruins, piece by piece. In July, Nathan decided to take the family on a trip to Crystal Cove, the beach he had once visited with Emily and the boys before she passed away. At first, the idea knotted his chest. The memories were vivid. Emily in a white dress, hair dancing in the breeze, her laughter echoing with the waves. But this time, as the car turned onto the familiar coastal road, he felt something different. Not pain, not emptiness, but peace. Grace sat beside him, her hair tied back, holding a juice can steady so Theo wouldn't spill. The boys were in the back, loudly singing a made-up song called Sea Dragon that Grace had improvised the night before. As they stepped onto the warm sand, Liam shouted, "It looks just like the Dragon Beach from the story." Grace smiled. "That's because I once came here with someone I loved very much." Nathan looked at her, and he realized this place wasn't just a monument to the past. It could be the beginning of something new. That afternoon, they built sandcastles, splashed in the surf, and shared sandwiches beneath a big umbrella. When Grace let down her hair, Theo suddenly said, "Mommy Grace, your hair flies just like Mommy Emily's used to." Grace froze, so did Nathan. But then Liam added, "Now we have two super moms." And for the first time, hearing Emily's name didn't break Nathan. It filled him with gratitude. That night, after the boys had fallen asleep in their tent, Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver velvet box, something he had carried for weeks, waiting for the right moment. They were sitting in the quiet garden behind the resort, golden string lights above, the waves whispering in the distance. "Grace," he said, "I once believed I'd never open my heart again. But then you came, and you didn't just save my boys. You saved me too." Her eyes filled with tears as he opened the box. A simple ring. "I'd love to," she whispered. "But there's one thing." The next morning, Grace brought the boys to the beach and opened a homemade storybook titled Father Dragon and Storm Lady. It told the tale of a warrior who had lost everything in a storm until he met a woman from the light, not a replacement, but a healer. Liam's eyes went wide. "This story, it's about us. Theo nodded. Does Father Dragon marry the Storm Lady? Grace smiled. Only if the little dragons say yes. The boys screamed, yes, marry her now. A week later in the backyard, under paper lanterns and handmade flower crowns, Nathan and Grace were married. No fanfare, no crowd, just the ones who mattered, and a family rebuilt, one tender piece at a time. On Sunday afternoon, they went on a short picnic at the neighborhood park, a simple outing, nothing fancy, but it felt whole. Grace laid out the red and white checkered blanket on the soft grass. Liam and Theo chased butterflies in the fading sunlight. Nathan sat beside her, holding a cup of lemonade, eyes following the boys with a heart that finally felt light. A breeze rolled through. Leaves tumbled gently. The sun dipped low, casting warm amber light across the field, turning Grace's hair and the sky around them to gold. I used to think I'd never feel peace again, Nathan said quietly. But then you came. Grace smiled but said nothing. You didn't just save my sons. His voice caught in a deep breath. You saved me. Grace turned to him, squeezing his hand. No words were needed. Just then, Liam came running up with a fallen leaf in hand. Can I keep this as a magic protector? Theo nodded enthusiastically. We're the most protected family ever. Mommy Grace is here, and Mommy Emily's watching from heaven. Nathan smiled. In that moment, he knew. He hadn't just survived the storm. He had rebuilt something stronger from its wreckage. Even the deepest wounds could heal, not through time, but through love and through the quiet presence of someone who chose to stay. The sunset wrapped around them like a soft blanket. On that checkered picnic cloth in the middle of the park, 4 people sat close. No words left to say because they all knew. At last, they had found their way back home.